Like a lot of people, you have an avoidant ex, and you also got dumped by that avoidant ex, and you've wisely gone into no contact since then, which is absolutely the right thing to do. Exes do come back, even avoidant ones, up to 55% of the time, but that means 45% of the time they don't. So in this video, I'm going to share with you the 7 telltale signs that you being in no contact is confusing your avoidant ex. And anytime someone's in a state of confusion, that means they're wondering about you. That means they're curious about you. That means they don't understand what's going on with you, but they're thinking about you. And anytime someone is doing that, their attraction for you is increasing and leading them back to you, which is exactly what you want, if you want them back. So let's talk about it. Now, of course, avoidant attachment style can refer to a fearful avoidant attachment style or a dismissive avoidant attachment style. Dismissives always keep people at arm's length because they desperately fear emotional intimacy and that deep emotional connection because they got hurt as a young child on an emotional level by their primary caretakers, usually mom or dad. And they learned that the best way to keep themselves safe emotionally is to never let anybody in too close. Fearful avoidants are often like that as well, but if they sense you pulling away, which is exactly what happens when you're in no contact, then they switch to more of an anxious attachment style and they try and pull you back in, and they're emotionally erratic, and your being in no contact is driving them crazy. But either way, if they were an avoidant, they probably saw you as smothering, needy, clingy, or controlling, or maybe all of the above. So those fears of you still being that way have to go away completely, which means you have to be completely vigilant in your no contact. You can't occasionally break it and expect that fear to go away, because every time you break it, you look needy. So stay in no contact. No emailing, no calling, no texting, no stalking on social, and especially no looking at their Instagram or Facebook stories, because your name will show up on a list of people who have viewed those. Confusion number 1, the control disruption. They expected you to be desperate, to be broken, to beg, to plead, please take me back. And maybe you were that way a little bit after you initially got dumped before you went into no contact, but they expected you to stay that way. And by you going no contact, you've completely changed the rules. And your silence completely removes their sense of control, because if you're desperate, you're begging, you're pleading, then they are in control. They can't predict your emotions or your reactions anymore, and it's driving them insane. So specific ways that this might manifest might be them frequently checking your social media. Or maybe they're frequently asking your mutual friends how you're doing. And the less information they get, the more frustrated they get. Oftentimes, avoidance, because they felt out of control in childhood, they tend to be micromanagers in adulthood. And the fact that they can't micromanage you or what's going on between the two of you is driving them insane. Confusion number 2, the narrative challenge. They created specific justifications for why they broke up with you. But now they can't confirm whether you're doing better without them or whether you're suffering without them. And now they're beginning to question the reasons that they used to justify the breakup. And it creates cognitive dissonance because they're questioning those reasons. And it leads them to question every decision they've made with regards to you. And now they're looking for new justifications, and they're probably not finding them because there's precious little information coming from you. And for that reason, it's important that when you're posting things on your social media, that you're not posting things to kind of bait them or give them clues as to what's really going on with you. Confusion number 3, the availability paradox. They fundamentally wanted distance from you, but they also wanted to be able to control that distance and know that you were still out there waiting and that they could have you back anytime they snapped their fingers. They fundamentally wanted distance from you, but they also wanted to be able to control that. And they liked the idea of you just sitting around miserably waiting on them, knowing that they could have you back anytime they wanted to. And you being in no contact removes that safety net. They're now no longer sure that if they snapped their fingers and asked you back, that you'd come back. And your complete absence is creating feelings of loss that weren't there initially. And now they're coming to the realization that they can't have you on their carefully controlled terms. And ultimately, this is disrupting their push-pull dynamic, because avoidants typically have that push-pull pattern. They can't push you away because you're already gone and you're not begging to come back. And they don't have the opportunity to pull you back. And of course, they could say something like, oh my God, I totally screwed up. I really shouldn't have dumped you. I want you back. Will you please take me back? Of course, they could say that. And then, of course, you could end it right then and there unilaterally. But most people are not going to say that. Most people don't want to be that vulnerable because they don't want to risk rejection, because they might say all that and you could be like, no, I don't think so. Most people's ego can't handle that. Confusion number 4, the fear of loss trigger. They expected to be able to dictate the entire process following the breakup. And your complete withdrawal, especially if we're talking about a fearful avoidant, is really triggering their fears of abandonment. And it's sending their anxiety through the roof. And that means they're constantly thinking about you. They're almost obsessing over you. Dismissive avoidants, of course, are going to be a lot more controlled in their emotions than fearful avoidants, but they will begin to suddenly feel emotional responses to your loss that they didn't expect. Confusion number 5, the identity disruption. As a couple, you are a huge part of their identity. This is especially true if the two of you were together for 2 or more years. Their identity, at least in part, was wrapped up in you. And the two of you together as a couple forged a big part of their identity. And now your complete withdrawal and the possibility that you might not ever come back is forcing them to have to redefine who they are and to recreate their own identity. They're having to face life without you. And they're having to deal with all these emotions that they probably weren't dealing with up to and shortly after the breakup. There's the loss of the role that you played in the relationship. Of course, there's all the things that you did for them in the relationship too. They're beginning to question who they really are and who they will be moving forward. And they're having unexpected grief over having to deal with the loss. Confusion number 6, the healing misalignment. They expected you to heal on their timeline and on their terms. And now you're doing it on your terms, and they have no idea what that is. Your independent healing journey is completely confusing to them. And they've completely lost the ability to influence your healing journey. And depending upon what you're posting on social media and whether they're stalking your social media, they may be very surprised at the healing and the growth that you're showing. They may have unexpected reactions to your emotional independence. And they may be completely confused if you're not following the grief patterns that they thought you would. In other words, they probably expected you to be miserable without them and to sit around desperately moping, just hoping that they would come back. And if you're not doing that, which is absolutely what you should not be doing, then you're confusing them. You should be moving on with your life. You should be focused on becoming the very best version of you that you can be. And you should not be looking in the rearview mirror. If they come back and they want to earn another chance with you, great. Let them do that. But you don't need to be sitting around waiting for that. And confusion number 7, the relationship value reassessment. Your absence is forcing them to reevaluate what the relationship actually meant, both to you and to them. And they're having to confront the decision that they made and realize what they discarded when they dumped you. And before, the breakup consequences were just theoretical if they thought you were just sitting around waiting on them. And now they're having to deal with the reality of what the breakup consequences really are. So how this might show up in them, especially if you're looking at their social media, is you might see an increase in posts that are kind of reminiscing about the past. Maybe posting pictures of places that the two of you went or places that the two of you talked about going. Maybe posting music or quotes or lyrics that were special to the two of you, or maybe even your song. They may be downplaying problems that seemed insurmountable in the past, but now they're realizing that those things are really inconsequential compared to the loss of you. And now they're having to compare the current reality that they live in with what the reality was back when the two of you were together. And ultimately, all of this is causing them to regret their decision. Now, it's important to understand that just because they're going through all of this and maybe regretting their decision doesn't necessarily mean that they want you back, doesn't necessarily mean that they will ask you back. So you've absolutely got to stay vigilant in your no contact and not break it for any reason. I don't care if you're seeing all of these signs until they reach out to you directly and say, hey, I miss you. I want to see you. Can we get together and talk? But once you hear that, set no contact aside, get together with them in the evening at a specific date and time and make it happen. Remember, I do offer one-on-one coaching. That can be in the form of a phone call, a Zoom session, or you can simply email me your question and I'll record a custom video just like this one and get it back to you within a couple of weekdays. If you want more info on that, it's down in the description or on this card right up here. But let me know your story about what's going on with you and your ex down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.